I'm here with Peter Lavelle, host of RT's CrossTalk. Peter, I believe you are at RT Studios at this very moment. Let's talk about the horrific event that took place, the burning of the Notre Dame Cathedral. Peter, lots has been said already about this, but I want to get your take on it. What do you think this symbolizes, this burning down of the cathedral, without getting into the details as to who or what's to blame? We'll get into that maybe a little bit later, but what do you think this symbolizes?
Well, I think it's a stark reminder of what we're losing in Western civilization. It's not being protected, it's not being respected, it's not being invested into, and this is what happens because of neglect. And I think this is much more on a societal, even spiritual level, about the importance of where we came from and we, the current generation, what we're going to leave behind. We're not leaving behind very much of what is good in my mind at all. And we have to save and protect what we have from the past. And this was the second most important cathedral in Europe outside of St. Peter's Basilica. And I hope it's a stark reminder of what needs to be done as a kind of an awakening out of this postmodern sleepwalk that is so destructive. And I hope it's a way for France not to be more divided, but to start becoming more united, because we're a very divided society there under enormous amount of stress. And the church historically has been a unifier, and it's the basic foundation of the French nation. And so much of that is forgotten. I mean, the word neglect, because who knows, maybe that was the reason why it burned down to the ground in the first place. We don't know, and I don't really want to speculate about that. We don't have facts. But I think from a cultural point of view, it's something that we're losing so quickly, with almost thoughtlessly losing that culture and being replaced by other traditions that were not there in the first place. And I think the French people have to, cherish, their cultural heritage in watching. I mean, I had tears running down my face watching those pictures for the first time. It's just awful on so many different levels. And of course, I was in contact with a number of my French friends, and they're all in a state of devastation right now. And what happens next? I mean, you can rebuild it. Yes, you can rebuild it, but you're never going to rebuild the essence of it. Okay, and this is what the French people have to do, is get back to the essence of what that church means to them and what it means in their country's history and in the role it played in Western civilization. So on very many different levels, this is an absolute tragedy.
This is happening on Easter week, which makes it even doubly as tragic. And also adds, I think, to the weight of the symbolism. And I think this plays into a larger theme, and you touched upon it. I'd like you to expand on it some more, Peter, which is, Notre Dame is perhaps one of the best known symbols of European beauty, of a time when we created beautiful things. Maybe that spoke to a higher power. They were inspired by God, and it came through in the architecture. It came through in the paintings. It came through in the art. And it seems that we're missing that today, but we're also not respecting something that we just may have lost yesterday.
When you think of the people that built it over a course of a century, I mean, there are generations that built that church. Generations, all right? I mean, and it was to become a bedrock. It was supposed to be something to admire, to appreciate, and to show the strength of their faith and the role that faith plays in their culture. We have to point out, in this year alone, attacks on Christian churches in France alone is up 25% year on year, and it was pretty high last year as well. We have a lot of desecrations of Christian places, cemeteries, churches, statues, all across France. And we have to be very clear here. Historically speaking, there's an anti-clerical strand in French history, but it doesn't explain the spike that we're seeing now against churches and against the ultimate church of France. So Has to be a lot more introspection of what's going on. Why is this happening to French culture? And is there the will to reverse it? I mean, that's a serious question. Are people, what is it? Is it just for tourism? Is that what it's for now? I mean, they have to have some soul searching about what this event means moving forward. You can rebuild it, but rebuild what? An empty, soulless house, or a place where you have a cultural foundation to reflect upon.
You're a man of history, Peter, and I'm going to try to connect some dots historically speaking, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. And I want you to try to lend some perspective as to what happened. The church after the French Revolution, Notre Dame, did become a secular building. So the religious aspect was taken away because the French Revolution was an atheist move. Yeah, it was an atheist movement. When Napoleon came, he once again instituted religion and faith back into the cathedral. Can you say that the same thing, that history is repeating itself now as well, in that you used to have Notre Dame be a religious monument, but then it became, like you said, a tourist attraction? And it's kind of like when you're not respecting what it was built for, well, then the higher power, you may call it God, you might call it karma, the universe, takes that away. And it seems that Europe is moving more towards an agnostic and atheist worldview. They just don't care. They may not care about this. They just see it as you said, a tourist attraction. Buy a ticket, see the church, and that's that.
You know, you are from Europe, and I've traveled there all my entire adult life. And I'll just be really frank with you. They don't really build anything that's very attractive anymore. I mean, it is soulless. We say that's cliche, I know, but I feel nothing. I feel a sense of attachment. I don't feel a higher calling, something that is better than me, something that I should aspire to. And this is what that church meant. I mean, it's iconic because of the role it played. I mean, it survived so many catastrophes, but it didn't survive a fire that I guess they couldn't put out for 9 hours. Well, there's a lot of questions about that, and I don't want to go into it. But I just have to wonder, you know, Macron, is this important to him? Is this just a political tool he can use, you know, being the rescuer of the nation and all that? I mean, I really hope that they're very careful with this, because French politicians have been very callous, and that's an understatement recently. And this goes way beyond any government and any other politician. So, yeah, but, you know, the aesthetics, I mean, there's no aesthetics anymore. There's no sense of honor and loyalty, all that old school stuff. But that old school stuff created a great civilization that most of the world, if not all of it, aspire to. It certainly has elements of it. And the West doesn't understand that. They despise their own culture, they despise their own religion, and they have nothing to replace it with of value. Nothing, zero.
Why do you think we see so little beauty being built like Notre Dame today?
That's a really good question. I think the human in the West imagination has died. And there's a worship of technology. Technology is going to solve all of our problems. Even our societies look technological. Our architecture is. What culture, I mean, you know, what everyday culture, we call it pop culture for a reason. It's not really culture. Western civilization is stuck, and it isn't creating anything at all. Things, consumption, that's not leaving a mark, okay? That's leaving a void, if anything right now, okay? And people are generally miserable all across Europe, all across the Western world. People are miserable because they think that, you know, multiculturalism will solve our problems. No, multiculturalism is the problem. There's no virtue anymore. None of the great ideas of what we got from Rome, you know, aesthetics, you know, being a part of connected to a greater whole. Everyone's atomized right now. We're all put into little boxes. We have little labels, and you're virtuous if you have a history of suffering or can prove it. Okay, I mean that's You can't keep a society together like that. That's why we built churches since the advent of Christendom, a sanctuary, a safe place where you could all come together to worship and sometimes to be protected from outside forces. You always went to the church, and that's where you met your community. That's how we started. It's all been abandoned. And what takes its place? Drugs? What virtuous replacement is there? There isn't one, and they have to wake up to that. Because the way Western civilization is run now, it's just grinding itself into the ground, and then they're not saving it. They don't want to save it. It's culture side.
Finally, Peter, to wrap it up, do you think, I would say maybe a tragedy like this 50 or 100 years ago would rally the country together? I mean, it would really rally the country together, and it's no secret that France is on the slide. It's in an abyss right now. With technology and the news cycle moving so fast, will a tragedy like this save France, or do you think this is by next week people would have forgotten and we'll move on to the next thing?
I think unfortunately a lot of people will, but like I said earlier, having contact with some of my French friends through WhatsApp and on Facebook and all that, this is a devastating blow for them. They're not going to forget it. And I hope they keep it in the public eye. But you're absolutely right with the news cycle and all of that. Some titillating story, Stormy Daniels or the creepy porn lawyer. I mean, all this nonsense, it doesn't add to our lives. It doesn't add to our knowledge. It doesn't add to our virtue. And, so that's an interesting juxtaposition, the news cycle and this devastating accident, they tell us, in France.
Because we just don't have time anymore. It just seems like we don't have time to reflect. We're just moving on to the next thing.
Yeah, because we're all miserable. This is what postmodernism has done, okay? It's made us miserable.
On the bright side of things, if there is a bright side to look at, a lot of the interior was saved. The cross actually was preserved. So, I mean, there is something to build on, I guess you could say.
Yeah, well, but I think they need to look at the broader question of all of this vandalism of churches in Christendom, of all places. And one last point I'd like to mention is that I think all of us should appreciate also the devastation of holy places where the U.S. and its allies have invaded. Look at the fate of Christians in Iraq and in Syria. They're completely forgotten by the West. And their churches have been destroyed. The West doesn't care because it doesn't care about Christianity. It doesn't care about Christians. So, it starts at home, and start respecting people's places of worship, not only in France, but all around the world.
And also the fact that they've laid a lot of devastation to a lot of Islamic monuments as well, and a lot of Islamic places of faith that when you start wars, illegal wars, you're going to destroy a lot of places of worship. Christian, Islamic, etc.
And and depending on your level of religiosity, that can really hit you hard,
right?
And sometimes in a really negative way. I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, great point. Great way to end it. Mr. Peter Lavelle, host of RT's CrossTalk, coming to us from RT Studios in Moscow. Thank you very much, Peter, for your insight on Notre Dame. Take care.